Hi everybody, I wanted to review quiz 6 with you. I was able to find the matching answers in both the book and the PowerPoints. I do see one area that is confusing, but overall I was able to find everything pretty consistent. So let's just go through it so you can see where I found everything, okay? So the first question is, each of the following is true of deciduous teeth as compared with permanent teeth except one. Which one is the exception? So let's go through each of these. The deciduous teeth are generally lighter in color, okay? And I found that right here on page 195 under number 8. And then on our PowerPoint, let's see here, pull up 16. I found it here, which is whiter in color with a bluish cast, okay? And the second one is the dentin is thinner. So let's go to our book. And I found that down here. The dentin thickness between the pulp chambers and the enamel is much thinner than in permanent teeth. And then here we have dentin thickness between pulp chambers and enamel is thinner. And that was slide number 7. The next one, pulp horns extend higher occlusally. Okay, we're going to go back to page 195. Oh, that's not it. I thought I could sneak that in. And let's see here, I believe right here, the pulp horns of deciduous teeth extend rather high occlusally, placing them much closer to the enamel than the pulp horns of permanent teeth. So that's important to know because they don't need a very deep cavity on those cusp tips when those horns are so high before it affects that. So they could get an abscessed tooth pretty easily with those pulp horns. But generally you don't see decay on cusp tips, but it's not unheard of. Also, they can wear them down pretty fast. Okay, and then on our slides, we have pulp horns extend high, closer to the enamel. Okay, so they're saying the same thing, just that a little different wording. Okay, so what's next here? There is a pronounced cervical ridge. This got a few of you, but you have to read all of these to find. Here on number 4 it says the ridge of the enamel at the cervical third of the anterior labial-lingually is more prominent in the deciduous dentition. And then here the buccal cervical ridges are more pronounced. Okay, so you just had to read both of them. This one got a few of you. And cervical prominence gives crowns a bulbous appearance. Oops. Let's do it. Okay. Now, let's go to enamel is thicker and more protective. And that is the one that is the exception. If you go to your book, I always click on the wrong one. I'm trying to sneak it in here. We're going to find that right here. The enamel of deciduous teeth is relatively thin and has a consistent depth. Okay, so meaning it's as thin as it is pretty much everywhere. It's not like our permanent teeth where it's really thick on the occlusal and then it thins more as you go down the tooth or up the tooth. Just going to close this one here. Okay, and then here we go. Enamel is thinner, right here. Okay, again, that's slide 7. So we finished question number 1. Also, just so you know, this is available to you guys. The answers are now under the feedback. If you can't find it, email me and I will open it up. I'll double check to make sure it's open after I do this, okay? Let me just write that down. Okay, the next question. Which of these deciduous molars is wider mesiodistally than facial-lingually? Now, I think this is where a lot of you thought that the book was inconsistent, and I can understand that. Because if we go to page 194, I believe it is, this is, with all of the teeth, it's saying that the deciduous molars are wider mesiodistally than the permanent molars. But that doesn't mean that all of them are wider mesiodistally than they are buccolingually. It's just stating that they're wider. Okay? So let's go to page 204 here. And we're going to find three and okay, so here's our 204. Okay, let's see here. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so it says, like all maxillary molars, it is wider buccolingually than mesiodistally. And we're talking about the maxillary first molar here, or second molar, I think. But it says, however, like other maxillary molars, so that's stating that all maxillary molars, it is wider buccolingually than mesiodistally. Okay, so remember, it's still wider mesiodistally than the permanent, but in this particular case, it is still, the maxillary teeth are wider buccolingually than mesiodistally. I hope that makes sense for you guys. It is a little confusing, but that is, it is wider buccolingually. Okay. This is the maxillary right first molar. Okay, so it's just stating that all the other maxillary molars, so the first and second maxillary molars, are wider. Okay, I'll highlight that one. Okay, and then if we go to page 208, where we're talking about the maxillary, or excuse me, the mandibular second molar. And here's our answer. Mandibular first molar, sorry. The crown is wider mesiodistally than buccolingually. So let's go back to our question here. Which of these deciduous molars are wider mesiodistally than facial-lingually? So there is kind of a word play here, and I don't like that because I don't like to trip people up. But remember, facial is buccal. Okay, and lingual is pretty consistent. So there is a little word play there where in the book they're saying buccolingually, and here they're saying facial-lingually. Okay, so first molars, we can rule out all first molars because the maxillary first molars are wider facial or buccolingually. We can rule out these because of the maxillary, and of course our maxillary molars in general. So that eliminates all of these. So this is our answer, the mandibular molars. Okay, and then on page 211, it's kind of, I think, a little more vague here, just stating that it resembles the mandibular first molar. So I think that's kind of a little tricky. Okay. Now let's go to our next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me show you those on the slides. And they're on slide, if we go to slide 36 here. Maxillary first molars, wider buccolingually than mesiodistally. And slide 58, talking about mandibular first molars. Crown is wider mesiodistally than buccolingually or faciolingually. Mandibular second molars, narrow buccolingual dimension compared with mesiodistal dimension. So again, they're just saying the same thing. You really have to pick through it. Okay, let's move on to number 3 here. The primary tooth is able to erupt because the gubernacle canal breaks down the bone. Oh, let me just click on this. Between the tooth and the surface oral epithelium. Okay, both the statement is true and the reason are correct and related. So now we're going to go to chapter 22 here. Okay, so the fibrous cord is known as the gubernacle cord and forms a gubernacle canal. That leads the way, and with the help of macrophages and osteoclasts, break down the bone between the tooth and the surface oral epithelium of the primary tooth. And here's on our slides. Let's see here. Oh, right on the right one here. As the tooth moves towards the surface, the dental follicle cells covering the tooth form a cord of connective tissue epithelium, the gubernacle cord. This cord forms a canal, so that's the gubernacle canal. Again, not the clearest. I want to change that right now. Oops, sorry. Canal that allows macrophages and osteoclasts to break down the bone between the tooth and the surface oral epithelium. Okay. So going back to our question, both are true and related. Okay, here we go. Next one. The vascular pressures in the periodontium seem to disrupt eruption because the pulsating blood pressures interfere with cellular activity. Okay. So let's go to page 289. And this is under the vascular pressure of the dental tissues. These pulsating blood pressures do not only enhance cellular activity, so here it's stating that they disrupt it, but in fact they enhance it right here. But they seem to have a direct eruptive role. However, it is difficult to assess because removal of all fluid pressures would mean the elimination of oxygen and other nutrients from developing teeth. So it does not interfere. They think that it helps with eruption. Okay. Again, it's confusing here because it's saying, okay, yeah, this is it, but we aren't sure. But it does help. It acts as a shock resorber for your teeth. So I think that's important to know. I like their feedback here. It's thought that the vascular pressures within the periodontium enhance activity and positively influence tooth eruption. There is an agreement that the shock absorber function of the periodontal ligament is a result of these vascular forces. Okay? So they aren't interfering with cellular activity. An ankylosed deciduous tooth will prevent the eruption of a permanent tooth because the alveolar crest of the bone fuses in the cervical area with the dentin of the resorbing root. So the statement is correct that ankylosed deciduous teeth will prevent the eruption of permanent tooth. However, what makes the reason incorrect is that the bone fuses to the cervical area with the cementum, not the dentin. Okay? And that can be found on page 291. Second, there may be ankylosis of the primary tooth, a condition in which the alveolar crest of the bone fuses to the cervical area with the cementum of a resorbing root. And this is where they're talking, let's see here. Although virtually all the root may have been resorbed, the tooth remains firmly in place, preventing the permanent tooth below from erupting. Okay? Finish highlighting that. Okay, so here is where it is connecting with the cementum. And here's where it states that it is firmly in place and preventing the permanent tooth from erupting. And then in the PowerPoint, you can go to retained primary teeth. This is slide number 19. Several reasons why primary teeth are retained. And number 2 states ankylosis of the primary tooth. The alveolar crest of the bone fuses with the cervical area of the cementum of a resorbing root. Okay? Next question. During the eruptive stage, the reduced enamel epithelium fuses with the dental follicle to create the eruptive force. The eruptive stage continues until the erupting teeth meet the opposing arch. So the first statement is false and the second is true. And the reason behind this is that the reduced enamel epithelium fuses with the oral epithelium rather than the dental follicle. The tooth breaks through this layer and emerges into the oral cavity. Okay, so let's go to page. Oh, did I close my book? Darn. Okay, so while that's hopefully loading, let's go to slide number 7 here. Okay, so this is again slide number 7, active tooth eruption, eruptive stage. Okay, when the reduced enamel epithelium contacts the oral epithelium, again, not the dental follicle, the oral epithelium. The tooth breaks through this layer and emerges into the oral cavity. Okay? And my book isn't opening. Oh, it's because it is still open. Okay, sorry about that. And we're going to go to page 288. And this is actually regarding the next question too. Let's see here. Sorry, I had this. Reduced enamel epithelium then contacts the oral epithelium. These two layers fuse into one layer, the united oral epithelium. Okay, again, that's page 288. The successional lamina. So to break this down, successional means, the successors. So this is concerning the permanent teeth. Okay, so the successional lamina is seen only facially or buccally to the anterior primary teeth because the permanent anteriors erupt slightly lingual to their primary counterparts. While the permanent posterior teeth lie below the primary and erupt through their established avulus. Okay, so let's go to here. And the successional lamina forms a tooth at its end. Tooth becomes surrounded by bone. Successional lamina of the anterior teeth form the gubernacle canal. Can also, let's see here. Okay. You will see small openings in the alveolar bone just lingual to the primary teeth. And the reason that is that that's where the gubernacle canal is. And under normal circumstances, the erupting teeth, the permanent teeth, will follow that pathway of the gubernacle canal in order for them to reach the occlusal surface. okay? So the teeth need to go, you know, they don't just randomly pop through. There is a pathway for the teeth. And don't think there was a slide that had this information on it. Okay. Now let's go to our next question. Oh, let me follow through with this one. So the statement is not correct, but the reason is correct. So the statement is not correct because it is seen only on the lingual of the surface, or on the lingual alveolar bone, because that's where the gubernacle canal is. Okay. Because the permanent anterior erupt slightly lingual to their primary counterparts. So our permanent teeth are erupting slightly lingually as compared to our primary, or our baby teeth, or deciduous teeth, however you want to refer to them. Our permanent teeth erupt just to the inside, the lingual. And then our permanent posterior teeth lie below the primary and erupt through their established alveolus. Okay. And here it states, while the permanent posterior teeth lie below the primary and erupt through their alveolus. Okay? Oops, wrong one. Deciduous maxillary molars have a well-established cusp of Carabelli. This is false. And why is this false? Well, let's look at page 204. Okay, so this is saying a tiny tubercle can sometimes, this is the maxillary right first molar. Okay, and it says a tiny tubercle can sometimes be seen on the mesiolingual cusps, but it cannot be called a cusp of Carabelli. So that right there makes it false. Now, if we go to page 207, where we're talking about the second maxillary second molar, the tubercle of Carabelli is a fifth cusp of this tooth. It is poorly developed and is located on the lingual surface of the mesiolingual cusp. Poorly developed. Okay, so back to our question. Deciduous maxillary molars have a well-developed cusp of Carabelli. So the first molar has a tubercle, but is not called a cusp of Carabelli, and the second one is on the second deciduous maxillary molar. There is a cusp of Carabelli, but it's poorly developed. Okay? So if we go to our slides, these are on chapter 16 slides. Slide number 40. Mesiolingual cusp more pronounced and long. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's see here. I don't think it's mentioned on here. Maybe that was my point. Okay, and then slide 51. States the tubercle of Carabelli, it is poorly developed right here, located on the lingual surface of the mesiolingual cusp. Okay? I hope this is helping you guys. The largest cusp on the maxillary second molar is the mesiolingual cusp. And that is true. That's on page 208 of our book. Mesiolingual cusp is the largest, and the distal lingual is the smallest, except for the fifth cusp. That wasn't in the slides. Okay, let's see here. Root elongation is the main factor in the tooth's eruption into the oral cavity. So, we go to page 2. See if I can just punch the page in here and see if I can get it. Nope. There we go. There. Okay, it has been said that the increase in root length or root elongation forces the tooth into the oral cavity. However, several things would tend to disprove this. Experiments have been done in which Hertwig's root sheath has been destroyed and root growth has stopped or inhibited, Yet the tooth has still erupted. Teeth have had their roots cut and a pin placed through the apical section, but the occlusal portion continues to erupt. On the other hand, third molars have grown roots to full length, but the teeth have not erupted. It seems that root elongation by itself is not required for tooth eruption, but probably has a relationship to the process. So there's probably a relationship, but they're saying that it is not the main factor. Okay? So make sure when you're reading that you're reading the whole paragraph, what's around it. Okay? And then this is also on our slides, chapter 22 and slide 10. Root elongation by itself is not required for tooth eruption, but probably has a relationship to the process. Okay, and here we go with our last ones. Maxillary, okay, so you're supposed to match these with the correct answer. And so the maxillary first molar, the answer was primary tooth that bears least resemblance to another tooth. And so that is actually on page 202. It does not, this is under the maxillary first molars buccal aspect. It does not resemble any other tooth, deciduous or permanent. This is the most atypical of all. Okay, and let's see here. B, primary mandibular second molar. Now, I don't like that this doesn't say primary either. It is in the primary section. We're testing on primary dentition. But I don't like that it doesn't have it there. And when you guys take a test, I want primary or permanent. When you're writing it out, I want primary or permanent, maxillary or mandibular, and then the side, and then which tooth it is, first molar, second molar, whatever, okay? And then B, the primary mandibular second molar resembles the permanent mandibular first molar. So primary mandibular second molar resembles the permanent mandibular first molar. Okay. So let's go to, whoops. Primary mandibular second molar resembles a permanent mandibular first molar. Okay, got a little note here. Oh, okay, so this is used in question 2 and 10. Okay, I hope that helped you guys. I don't know if that was on the slides. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't think that was in the slides. So, okay, I hope this helped you guys.